Okay, this is part 100 of Nos4a2. Gumdrop Lane. High-pitched whine, a confusion of dust and drifting motes of flame. The world slid itself into an envelope of silence in which the only sound was a soft droning, not unlike the emergency broadcasting signal. Time softened, ran with the sweet drag of syrup trickling down the side of a bottle. Vic glided through the atmosphere of ruin and watched a chunk of burning tree, the size of a Cadillac, bounce in front of her, appearing to move at less than a fifth of its actual speed. In the silent snowstorm of debris, a whirling pink smoke, Vic lost sight of Charlie Mannix and his car. She only dimly apprehended Wayne pushing himself up off all fours, like a runner coming out of the blocks. The girl with the long red hair was behind him with the knife, clutching it in both hands now. The ground shuddered and tipped her off balance, sent her reeling back into the stone wall at the edge of the drop. Vic weaved around the girl. The child, Millie, turned her head to watch Vic go, her lukewarm mouth open in a sickened look of rage, the rows of teeth churning inside her throat hole. The girl pushed off the wall, and as she did, it gave way and took her along with it. Vic saw her lurch back into nothing and drop into that white storm of light. Vic's ears whined. She believed she was calling Wayne's name. He ran from her, running blind and deaf, and did not look back. The Triumph carried her up alongside him. She twisted at the waist and reached and caught him by the back of his shorts and hauled him onto the bike behind her without slowing. There was plenty of time to manage this. Everything was moving so quietly and slowly, she could have counted each individual ember floating in the air. Her perforated kidney twanged in shock at this abrupt movement from the waist, but Vic, who was dying quickly now, did not let it trouble her. Fire flurried from the sky. Somewhere behind her, the snow of 100 winters smothered Christmasland, a pillow pressed over the face of a terminally ill man. It had felt good to be held by Lou Comedy, to smell his odor of pines and of the garage, and even better to have her own son's arms around her again, cinching her waist. In the droning, apocalyptic darkness, there was at least no Christmas music. How she hated Christmas music. She always had. Another burning lump of tree fell to her right, hit the cobbles, and exploded, throwing coals the size of dinner plates. A fiery arrow as long as Vic's forearm whizzed through the air and sliced her forehead open above her right eyebrow. She did not feel it, although she saw it pass by before her eyes. She clicked the Triumph effortlessly into fourth gear. Her son squeezed her tighter, her kidney twanged again. He was squeezing the life out of her, and it felt good. She put her left hand over his two hands, knotted together at her navel. She stroked his small white knuckles. He was still hers. She knew because his skin was warm, not frozen and dead like Charlie Mannix's pint-sized vampires. He would always be hers. He was gold, and gold didn't come off. Nos4a2 erupted from the billowing smoke behind her. Through the dead, droning silence, she heard it, heard an inhuman growl, a precision-engineered, perfectly articulated roar of hate. Its tires carried it juddering and crashing over a field of smashed rock. Its headlights made a storm of dust, that blizzard of grit, shine like a flurry of diamonds. Mannix was bent to the wheel, and he had his window down. "I'll slaughter you, you miserable bitch," he screamed, and she heard that too, though distantly, like the hush heard in a seashell. "I'm going to run you down, the both of you. You killed all of mine, and I'm going to kill yours." The bumper struck her rear tire, gave the Triumph a hard jolt. The handlebars jerked, trying to pull out of her grip. She held on. If she didn't, the front tire would turn sharply to one side or the other, and the bike would dump them, and the Wraith would thud right over them. The bumper of the Wraith slammed into them again. She was shoved forward, hard, head almost striking the handlebars. When she lifted her chin and looked up, the Shorterway Bridge was there, its mouth black in the cotton candy-colored haze. She exhaled a long rush of breath and almost shivered with relief. The bridge was there and would take her out of this place, back to where she needed to go. The shadows that waited within were, in their way, as comforting as her mother's cool hand on her fevered forehead. She missed her mother and her father and Lou, and was sorry they had not all had more time together. It seemed to her that all of them, not just Louis, would be waiting for her on the other side of the bridge, waiting for her to climb off the bike and fall into their arms. The Triumph banged up onto the bridge, over the wooden sill, and began to rattle over the boards. To her left, she saw the old familiar green spray paint, then 3 sloppy letters, Lou. The wraith boomed up into the bridge behind her, struck the rusted old Raleigh, and sent it flying through the air. It whistled past Vic on her right. The snow came roaring behind, an obliterating blast of it choking the far end of the bridge, filling it with a cork jammed into a bottle. "You tattooed C-U-N-T," Charlie Mannix screamed, his voice echoing through the vast hollow space. "You tattooed whore." The bumper banged into the back of the Triumph. The Triumph careened to the right, and Vic's shoulder slammed into the wall with such force she was almost torn off the saddle. The board shattered to show the furious white static beyond. The shorter-way rumbled and shuddered. "Bats, Mama," Wayne said, his voice soft, the voice of a younger, smaller child. "Look at all the bats." The air filled with bats, shaken loose from the ceiling. They whirled and raced around in a panic, and Vic lowered her head and flew through them. One struck her in the chest, fell to her lap, flapped hysterically, took to the air again. Another brushed the side of her face, with a felty wing. It was a soft, secret, feminine warmth. "Don't be afraid," Vic told him. "They won't hurt you. You're Bruce Wayne. All the bats in here are on your side, kiddo." "Yes," Wayne agreed. "Yes, I'm Bruce Wayne. I remember." As if he had for a while forgotten. Perhaps he had. Vic glanced back and saw a bat strike the windshield of the Wraith with enough force to smash a white spider web into the glass directly in front of Charlie Mannix's face. A second bat whacked into the other side of the windshield in a spray of blood and fur. It remained caught in one of the windshield wipers, frantically beating a shattered wing. A third and a fourth bat smacked into the glass, bouncing off, flying away into the dark. Mannix screamed and screamed, a sound not of fear but of frustration. Vic did not want to hear the other voice in the car, the child's voice. "No, Daddy, too fast, Daddy." But she caught it all the same, sounds amplified and carrying in the enclosed space of the bridge. The race slipped off course, swung to the left, and the front bumper hit the wall and tore away a 3-foot section to reveal the hissing white static on the other side, an emptiness beyond thought. Mannix pulled at the wheel, and the Wraith lurched across the bridge, over to the right, hit the other wall. The sound of boards splintering and snapping was like machine gun fire. Boards burst and shattered beneath the car. A hail of bats drummed into the windscreen, caving it in. More bats followed, whirling in the cockpit, striking Mannix and his child about the head. The little girl began to scream. Mannix let go of the wheel, flailing at them. Get away from me, you god-awful things," he screamed. Then there were no words, and he was just screaming. Vic hauled on the throttle, and the bike launched itself forward, rushing the length of the bridge through the darkness boiling with bats. It raced toward the exit, doing 50, 60, 70, taking off like a rocket. Behind her, the front end of the Wraith crashed through the floor of the bridge. The rear end of the Rolls-Royce lifted into the air. Mannix slid forward into a steering wheel, his mouth opening in a terrified howl. "No," Vic thought he screamed, or maybe it was snow. The Wraith pitched forward into snow, into white roar, tearing the bridge apart as it went. The shorter-way bridge seemed to fold in the center, and suddenly Vic was racing uphill. It collapsed in toward the middle, either end rising as if the bridge were trying to close itself like a book, a novel that had reached its ending, a story that reader and author alike were about to set aside. That's clever. Okay. Nos4a2 dropped through the decayed and rotting floor of the bridge, fell into the furious white light and buzzing static, plunged 1,000 feet in 26 years, dropping through time to hit the Merrimack River in 1986, where it was crushed like a beer can as it slammed into the water. The engine block came straight back through the dashboard and buried itself in Mannix's chest, an iron heart that weighed 400 pounds. He died with a mouth full of motor oil. The body of the child that had sat beside him was sucked out into the current and dragged nearly to Boston Harbor. When her corpse was discovered 4 days later, she had several dead, drowned bats tangled in her hair. Vic accelerated, 80, 90. Bats gushed out of the bridge around her into the night, all of them, all her thoughts and memories and fantasies and guilt, kissing Lou's big, bare chest the first time she ever took off his shirt, riding her 10-speed in the green shade of an August afternoon, banging her knuckles on the carburetor of the Triumph as she worked to tighten a bolt. It felt good to see them fly. to see them set free, to be set free of them herself, to let go of all thought at last. The Triumph reached the exit and flew with them, and she rode the night for a moment, the motorcycle soaring through the frozen dark. Her son held her tight. The tires hit the ground with great force. Vic was thrown hard against the handlebars, and the twinge in her kidney became an agonized, tearing sensation. Keep it shiny side up, she thought, slowing fast now, the front tire wobbling and shaking, the whole bike threatening to fling them off and go down with them. The engine screamed as the motorcycle slammed over the rutted ground. Vic had returned to the clearing in the woods where Charlie Mannix had led them over into Christmas land. Grass whipped frantically against the sides of the bike. She slowed and slowed and slowed, and the bike gasped and died. She coasted. At last the Triumph eased to a stop at the tree line, and she could safely turn her head and look back. Wayne looked with her, his arms still clenching her tight as if they were, even now, racing along at close to 80 miles an hour. Across the field she saw the Shorterway Bridge and a gusher of bats pouring out of it into the starry night. Then, almost gently, the entrance of the bridge fell backward. There was suddenly nothing behind it, and vanished before it hit the ground with a weak pop. A faint ripple spread out across the high grass. The boy and his mother sat on the dead bike, staring. Bats shrilled softly in the dark. Vic felt very easy in her mind. She was not sure there was much of anything left in there now, except for love, and that was enough. She drove her heel into the Kickstarter. The Triumph sighed its regrets. She tried again, felt things tearing inside her, spit more blood, a third time. The Kickstarter almost refused to go down, and the bike made no sound at all. "What's wrong with it, Mama?" Wayne asked in his new, soft, little boy's voice. She wiggled the bike back and forth between her legs. It creaked gently, but otherwise made no other sound. Then she understood, and laughed, a dry, weak laugh, but genuine. "Out of gas," she said.